Jungkook in tears as Jimin cancels his solo tour. The unexpected decision that stunned the K-pop industry and left ARMYs speechless. No one expected the tears. No one predicted that the very moment Jimin's long-awaited solo world tour was within reach, he would walk away from it. Not in defeat, not in scandal, but in an act so deeply personal that even veteran observers of the K-pop industry struggled to process its weight. Why would a global superstar, standing on the threshold of what could have been the defining chapter of his individual career, dissolve into tears in Jungkook's arms and choose a different path entirely? And why now? At this precise moment, when the global music market was primed for his return, the cancellation of Jimin's solo tour was not due to exhaustion, nor to logistical obstacles, nor to calculated marketing delays. It was, according to multiple individuals with knowledge of the situation, the direct result of an emotional and creative pact between Jimin and fellow BTS member Jungkook, a pact that has quietly been in motion since early 2023. At its heart, two of us, a joint world tour designed not as a commercial spectacle, but as a shared act of storytelling, healing, and artistic solidarity. This is not the narrative anyone anticipated. It is, however, one that has sent shockwaves through the industry and ignited a firestorm of speculation across the global ARMY community. For months, there had been signs, subtle but persistent. Jimin's conspicuous absence from Jin's emotionally charged London performance, his unusual silence on social media, the sudden disappearance of certain tattoos, carefully staged photographs heavy with motifs of reflection and return. None of these details on their own meant anything concrete. Together, they now form a pattern impossible to ignore. Inside a dimly lit rehearsal space, witnesses describe an intimate scene. Jimin, mid-rehearsal, overcome with emotion, embracing Jungkook while a lone piano note lingered in the background. It was not staged for cameras. It was not performed for fans. It was, by all accounts, a moment of unfiltered vulnerability. Two men who have endured a decade of public life together, silently acknowledging that their next chapter would not be walked alone. For an industry accustomed to grand announcements and meticulously timed promotions, the way two of us has emerged is unusual. There has been no press conference, no official teaser, no billboard campaign. Instead, there has been a calculated absence, a deliberate withholding of information that allows fans to piece together the clues themselves. This is not a rollout. It is a revelation. And the emotional stakes are higher than any BTS-related project since the group's hiatus began. If early descriptions are accurate, the tour will not be a standard sequence of performances. It will be a narrative, spanning their shared history, from cramped dorm rooms and trainee struggles, through the exhaustion and disillusionment of peak fame, to the quiet grief of BTS's temporary disbandment. Every song, every visual, will be charged with personal history. The concept, according to those close to its development, is less about idle spectacle and more about stripping away the image to reveal the human beings underneath. But why now? The proposed launch window, spring 2026, would coincide almost exactly with the completion of BTS's military service cycle. The symbolism is impossible to miss, a re-entry into the global stage not as seven, but as two, in an act of mutual healing before the full group reunites. Whether by design or coincidence, it positions Jimin and Jungkook as emotional first responders to the fandom's long-nursed longing for connection. That longing is already visible. Across Twitter, Weverse, TikTok, and YouTube, phrases like Jikook Tour 2026 and Two of Us trend almost daily. Fan-made posters circulate alongside tear-inducing video compilations of past performances. We Don't Talk Anymore, Christmas Love, reframed now as premonitions. The emotional intensity is palpable. Yet, in the absence of official confirmation, the question must be asked: are we responding to reality, or to a narrative shaped by selective glimpses and strategic silence? The possibility that this is an orchestrated buildup cannot be dismissed. Viral speculation is currency in today's digital economy, and few fandoms wield it as powerfully as ARMY. Every vague live stream, every cryptic lyric, every photograph is dissected for hidden meaning. The line between authentic artistic vulnerability and calculated emotional provocation grows ever thinner. Are we witnessing a raw, unscripted artistic choice? Or are we participants in a meticulously engineered media cycle? The evidence, as it stands, is fragmentary. There are eyewitness accounts of Jimin's tears. There are industry whispers of a joint tour. There are social media patterns that appear intentional. But there is no official schedule. No formal annunciamiento. No direct statement from either artist. What we have is an emotional architecture built from speculation, inference, and longing. And longing is a dangerous foundation. It can blur the line between hope and certainty, between desire and truth. The emotional gravity of the image, Jimin and Jungkook locked in an embrace, tears marking the birth of a new era, is undeniable. But where is the empirical confirmation? Without it, we must acknowledge the risk that the fandom's emotional investment is being made in a story that may never unfold as imagined. Yet, there is another truth. Even if two of us remains unconfirmed, the very act of its imagining has power. It has reignited a collective sense of anticipation, a shared heartbeat within a fandom dispersed by hiatus. It has reminded millions why these two artists matter to them, not just as performers, but as human beings navigating the same storms they themselves feel. This is the paradox. The story could be entirely accurate, or it could be a construct of fan interpretation and algorithmic amplification. In either case, it has already achieved cultural impact. But before we allow ourselves to cement belief into fact, there is a responsibility to ourselves, to the truth, and to the artists, to pause. To interrogate not just what we are told, but why we are told it and by whom. Because if the tour happens, if Jimin truly set aside his solo ambitions to stand beside Jungkook in an act of shared artistic reckoning, it will deserve to be celebrated for what it is, not for what we have imagined it to be. And if it does not happen, the grief should not become a weapon against the very artists we claim to support. The silence surrounding two of us will eventually break. Until then, the image of Jimin's tear-streaked face in Jungkook's embrace will remain suspended between truth and myth, between journalism and folklore. And the question that lingers, more pressing than any speculation about setlists or tour dates, is this: do we believe this story because it is true, or because we need it to be? The answer will not only determine how we process this moment, but how we navigate every emotionally charged narrative in the digital age to come. Under the weight of this silence, the K-pop ecosystem holds its breath. Every day, without confirmation, fuels two parallel forces: a mounting sense of inevitability and an equally strong undercurrent of skepticism. In forums, live streams, and late-night group chats, ARMY members dissect each micro-expression from recent public appearances, mapping them against the possibility of an unspoken agreement between the two youngest BTS members. The digital footprint of this speculation is immense, and it is growing. Yet the risk of misinterpretation looms larger than ever. Without official validation, every piece of evidence remains circumstantial, a lyric interpreted through the lens of longing, a photograph imbued with meaning it may never have intended. It is in this ambiguity that the real test lies, not for the artists, but for the audience. Can the world's most passionate fandom sustain both hope and restraint without letting one consume the other? If Two of Us is real, its delayed reveal may be a deliberate strategy to let the emotional temperature rise until the announcement strikes with maximum resonance. If it is not, then we are witnessing one of the most potent demonstrations of how collective desire can build an entire narrative from shadows and fragments. Either way, the stakes are now beyond music. They touch on trust, perception, and the evolving nature of celebrity in the algorithmic age. And perhaps that is why the image of Jimin crying in Jungkook's arms is so difficult to let go of. It speaks to something more than a tour, more than a collaboration. It suggests a rare glimpse into a bond unmediated by choreography or press releases, the kind of raw connection that both defies and feeds the machinery of fame. Until the truth is spoken aloud, this moment will remain suspended in a space where fact and feeling blur, where silence speaks as loudly as any song. When that silence finally breaks, one way or another, the world will be listening. The debate over whether Jimin's tearful embrace with Jungkook represents an authentic turning point or a carefully engineered spectacle now demands more than passive observation. It demands scrutiny. Can a scene so perfectly aligned with the emotional hunger of millions truly be coincidental? Or is it an intentional arrangement, a visual symbol planted to maximize media attention? We must ask these questions without fear of confronting answers that may unsettle us. Every element of this narrative, from the absence of official confirmation to the selective visibility of certain moments, bears the hallmarks of modern virality. Is this, then, a raw disclosure of human vulnerability, or is it a product meticulously assembled to harvest engagement metrics? Consider how the timing of such a revelation intersects with a global content void created by BTS's hiatus. Does the industry's need to sustain momentum outweigh its obligation to present events truthfully? We must also confront the sources from which this story emerges. TikTok clips, Twitter threads, YouTube analyses, and fragments shared on other platforms form the backbone of the current discourse. Are these credible witnesses to reality? Or are they contributors to an echo chamber where interpretation quickly becomes indistinguishable from fact? When countless fan edits repeat the same imagery with swelling music and selective captions, do we begin to believe not because the evidence grows stronger, but because its repetition creates the illusion of truth? There is a danger in conflating virality with validity. A trending hashtag is not proof. A million views do not equate to a single confirmed fact. Yet the human mind is wired to respond emotionally to repetition, to patterns, to narratives that fit neatly into our expectations. Could two of us be one of those narratives? A perfectly shaped emotional arc whose truth we accept because it feels right rather than because it is verified. Ask yourself directly, on what basis do you believe this tour exists? Have you seen an official tour schedule, a direct quote from the artist, a verifiable contract, or a formally released statement? If the answer is no, then what you hold is belief, not confirmation. And belief, while powerful, is also the most vulnerable currency in the digital age. Are you willing to invest that belief without guarantees? This is not an attempt to dismiss the emotional resonance of the moment. The image of Jimin's vulnerability, of Jungkook's quiet support, is compelling beyond measure. It invites empathy. It stirs hope. But are we confusing the emotional impact of an image with the factual reality of the event it depicts? The modern media environment thrives on precisely this blurring of lines, turning personal gestures into viral artifacts whose original context may be distorted or even lost. Consider how swiftly narratives form online. A single TikTok can generate millions of interpretations in hours. A Twitter thread can spark international headlines without passing through any process of journalistic verification. Does this speed serve the truth? Or does it serve only the appetite for immediacy? When we consume these fragments without pausing to question their origin, are we complicit in the construction of a story that may have little grounding in fact? It is essential to recognize that unverified stories do not simply exist in isolation. They shape public perception in real time. The more this narrative spreads, the more it will influence how future events are interpreted. If, months from now, Jimin and Jungkook announce an entirely different project, will the absence of two of us be seen as a betrayal? And if so, who betrayed whom? The artists who never confirmed the story or the audience who built it without their consent? We must acknowledge another possibility, that this story is neither wholly true nor wholly fabricated. Could it be that kernels of fact, private rehearsals, emotional exchanges, creative discussions have been expanded into a myth through collective fan speculation? If so, where does the boundary lie between respectful curiosity and invasive narrative building? The responsibility lies not only with the creators of such content, but with every individual who chooses to share it. Each retweet, each repost, each comment adds weight to a version of reality that may or may not exist. Are we prepared to accept that our own actions, however small, contribute to the momentum of a story we cannot verify? In this climate, skepticism is not cynicism, it is self-defense. It is the act of safeguarding one's judgment against the manipulations of both corporate marketing and collective emotional momentum. Will you allow yourself to be moved entirely by sentiment, or will you insist on corroborating what you're told, even when the narrative is seductive? Reflect on the mechanics at play here. Emotional hooks are embedded into content for a reason. They bypass critical reasoning and engage directly with our instinctive responses. The embrace, the tears, the absence, the coded hints, all function as triggers, whether deployed deliberately or coincidentally. Once activated, they create a cycle of emotional engagement that is difficult to disrupt. Do you have the discipline to step back from it? Moreover, consider the broader media ecosystem. Outlets that amplify this narrative do so because emotional stories attract clicks, shares, and watch time. Is it in their interest to slow down and verify, or to accelerate the spread before the next story overtakes it? If the latter, then who benefits from your attention, the artists, the fans, or the platforms profiting from your engagement? There is also the matter of precedent. How many times has the K-pop industry, or entertainment media more broadly, allowed ambiguity to persist because ambiguity sells? Could this be another instance where the lack of clarity is not a failure, but a deliberate feature? If so, what obligation do we, as the audience, have to resist being guided toward conclusions that serve someone else's agenda? This moment, then, is as much a test of our interpretive ethics as it is a piece of celebrity news. Will we demand substantiation before forming conclusions, or will we let the emotional pull of a compelling image dictate our beliefs? If tomorrow brought a definitive denial of two of us, would we accept it, or would we dismiss it as misdirection because it conflicts with the story we prefer? Such questions may be uncomfortable, but they are necessary. In an era where fact and fiction can be engineered to appear identical, vigilance becomes a moral duty. Each of us must ask, is my engagement with this story sharpening my understanding of the truth? Or is it deepening my immersion in a fiction I have chosen to believe? As you reflect, do so with the full awareness that this article, like the posts, videos, and threads from which it draws, is built upon sources that remain unverified. The information originates from social media observations, secondary commentary, and fragments of digital media, none of which carry the weight of confirmed fact. That is not an indictment. It is a statement of transparency. Will you allow that knowledge to temper your response? Or will the allure of the narrative override your caution? Ultimately, the choice is yours. You may decide that the emotional truth of the story, its resonance, its symbolism, its reflection of human connection, matters more than factual confirmation. Or you may choose to withhold belief until the artists themselves speak. Both paths are valid, but only one guards against the manipulation of your trust. Which path will you take? If the embrace was real, if the tears signaled a genuine redirection of artistic destiny, it will endure without embellishment. And if it was not, then the wisdom gained from questioning it will be far more valuable than the fleeting thrill of believing it. The world will eventually learn the truth of two of us. The question is, will you meet that truth prepared, or will you meet it surprised by your own willingness to believe?